You find out you have 1 hour to live. What do you do with your last hour on Earth? Hang out on my couch with all my pets, I guess. The usual. Hope it's not this hour. Got a real bad case of the shits, so I'd probably spend it where I am now. I have allergies. I will eat everything I had to stop eating because of them. Shit. It's almost 3 a.m. here. Probably go to bed. Procrastinate probably. Google 1 hour to live scam or legit. What was that one thing you tried out due to fear of missing out? FOMO. When I was a kid, the cool, older neighbor kids, also young kids, told me to eat grass. I of course didn't want to. So they told me they all did and I would be cool if I did. So I picked a big handful and ate it while everyone laughed at me. Afterwards it came out that none of them had, in fact, ate any grass at all. And, as it turns out, none of us knew what would happen if one were to eat grass. So I ran home where my old man was in the backyard spraying something with a garden hose or some shit. I said, "Hey Dad, what would happen if somebody ate a big handful of grass?" Quote. He replied, absolutely deadpan, "Tell me you didn't eat grass." I said, "Well no, but somebody else did and I was just." He said, "Gristle. Tell me you didn't eat grass." Tears started welling up and I said, "Well, I was running real fast and I fell, and when I fell my mouth landed on a clump of grass and my mouth closed on it and I accidentally swallowed a whole bunch of it and, am I gonna die?" Quote. He said, "Probably. But go in and drink as much water as you can stand and then I will take you to the hospital." I ran inside and drank as much water as I could and rushed out to the van where the old man was waving me into the open door. We flew out of the neighborhood, screaming towards the hospital while I cried in the back seat. Finally, we got to the liquor store down the street from the hospital where the old man said, "Nah, I'm just messing with you. You'll be fine." And he went in and bought beer and we drove home. I went to Easter Island. I was already in Santiago for work when I learned that it was the only place that sent flights there. I figured it was as close as I'd ever be. And I didn't know if or when I'd ever revisit Santiago. So I took the leap and did it. Totally worth it. I joined my friends in auditioning for the musical in senior year of high school because I just happened to be friends with a lot of theater kids. Ended up with a supporting role including a duet and a decent amount of lines. I still consider it one of the best decisions I ever made. It was a crazy amount of fun. Zip lines. I have a fear of heights, so I was very nervous about going on them in North Carolina with my friends. They were so supportive though, talking about how it's okay. You don't have to go, we understand. Or, of course you don't have to. I just think you would actually enjoy it. It was because they were so nice about it, I really didn't want to disappoint them. I had an absolute blast on them, by the way. So much fun after the first 5 seconds of terror on the first line, haha. Ate 10 ants to join my brother's club in first grade. Said I could only join if I ate 10 ants. So I did. And then he disbanded the club. Paragliding in Interlaken. I still have a fear of heights. But all my friends were doing it, so I just had to join. As a 20 to 30-year-old, you were offered the chance to live rent-free in a retirement or nursing home with the caveat that you must make an effort to spend at least a few hours per day with the other residents, sharing meals, hanging out, etc. Would you take this opportunity and why or why not? I actually did this in my mid-20s. I was a chef by trade at the time. I got the head chef gig at a community. But it was 2 hours from home. They told me there was one open in my town. But it didn't work out that way. It was great money and I was newly married. To sweeten the deal and not lose me, They offered me a furnished room in the building and it was only Monday through Thursday. Some of the best times of my 20s were had there. Wee bowling every night. Big dinners. Movie nights. The whole 9 yards. I enjoyed it immensely and was almost sad when the opening became available in my hometown. No. I basically did this twice in my 20s. I became a servant to the entire building. Change a light bulb. Run an errand. Fix the computer. Loneliness wasn't the issue for a whole team of seniors living in the same building. Accomplishing tasks they weren't physically able to do anymore was their issue. Now, the opportunity to live free in a house with 1 to 2 seniors to be their helper and companion. I'd do that. But never a whole building. Second example. A family doctor moved to my area where there is a notable housing shortage for rentals. Generally rural area. There is one seniors apartment building that is very nice and not full. Special exception was made for the doctor to have an apartment until she decided to stay as long as she would do on-call medical for the building. She lasted 2 weeks. Said people were banging on her door at all hours. Coming home to angry notes that she wasn't home. At work at her medical practice. As long as I was in a section with mentally sound people. Being around people battling dementia and Alzheimer's would be too much for me to deal with. The Netherlands has this exact scheme for students. You could think of the few hours per day as a really easy part-time job that pays for your housing. Homes are full of old ladies who have decades of experience with crafts. So live in knitting support. Hell yes. You'd have to have the windows open all the time to keep the care home smell at bay though. What's the most petty thing a neighbor has done to you? Stole the windshield wipers off of my car. I caught him on a security camera stealing them one night. Next day I went over to his house and told that some lowlife stole my damn wipers. The look he gave me was priceless. Don't think he liked me calling him a lowlife. After I told him I had him on video, he goes, "Fine, take them back," and that was the last time I spoke to him. A dorm neighbor was a huge dick and didn't care for anyone in the suite. So he did something like tip over his subwoofer, turn the music up and left for the weekend. The entire crew could feel it from our beds. I guess he didn't know that RAs have keys to the rooms. Maybe he also didn't know that you could get ejected from dorms. Fuck you, Bosco. You turd. Lived in a neighborhood for about a year that was also home to one of the city council members. This bitch would send notices to everyone for anything she didn't like, and she'd try and sway the council to crack down on those she deemed the worst offenders. We earned a spot at the top of her shit list because we put our garbage cans at the curb in the afternoon rather than the evening. None of us were going out after dark and dealing with rats springing out of the cans like tiny flea-ridden missiles. We didn't stop because legally we weren't doing anything wrong. She was a stickler for making the neighborhood look fabulous even though most of the houses were in shitty condition, and as mentioned earlier, the entire city had, probably still has, a really bad rat problem. So every week, we'd get a new notice from her. Though she always tried to say it was from the council as a collective. Yes. She hand-delivered that shit. I had a neighbor, who I had never met, continue to throw dead animal carcasses in my yard. This went on for several months. Rabbit, possum, squirrel, raccoon, you name it. One day, I witnessed him doing it, and this was how I determined who was actually performing this strange act. He was probably in his 60s. He opened his garage door, walked out with a pitchfork and something dead on it, then proceeded to yuck it in my front lawn. I waited until that night, picked it up and hurled it onto his car's windshield. He never did it again. My other neighbor, who I eventually met, Said he had some feud with the previous owner of my house. I guess he never realized I wasn't the guy he feuded with. Wacko neighbor was convinced that we had stolen his lawnmower. Of course we didn't. He ranted and raved about this, but we just tuned him out because we thought he was a harmless crackhead. One day he comes over in a panic and asks to borrow our lawnmower because his landlord was coming. And if the lawn wasn't mowed, he'd be evicted. At the time we lived on a dead-end street with 6 houses. What was the harm? He mowed his lawn, then promptly hid it in his back shed and denied ever borrowing it. Before it could escalate to anything, he was arresting for molesting his teenage stepdaughter, and we got our lawnmower back. Stole my trash bin because theirs got repossessed for lack of payment. Dumb asses thought I wouldn't know it was them. Trash collection company took my old trash bin away from them, gave me a brand new one, and gave me a credit for having to deal with all this bullshit.
Subscribe, my brothers.